What's up? So if you like me, living green and reducing your food waste is probably a little hard and complicated, right? But it doesn't have to be. Not when we're using Waste Not. Waste Not is an at-home composting service, and it's pretty simple. They give you a clean bucket, you put your food, scraps, paper products, and compostables in, then they come pick it up in like a week or two later, and they give you a whole new clean bucket. So give Waste Not a try at home. Check out wastenotcompost.com. Plus, our CityCast Chicago listeners can test the service with a free month by using promo code CityCastCompost, all one word. Today on CityCast Chicago, from pandemic puppies to stray cats, Chicago's animal shelters are reaching their capacity, especially at Chicago Animal Care and Control, the largest municipal animal shelter in the entire Midwest. We get an inside look at how animal control works, some pet adoption tips, and some of the weirdest animals the shelter sees. It's Monday, September 23rd. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I am joined today by Armando Tejeda, who is the Public Information Office at the Chicago Animal Care and Control. Armando, welcome to CityCast Chicago.
Thank you for having me.
I'm gonna be honest, this is the part where I usually say like, for listeners, can you explain? But I actually need a refresher here as well. So what are the roles and responsibilities of Chicago's Animal Care and Control?
Chicago Animal Care and Control is the only municipal shelter for the city of Chicago. We basically are in charge of all the stray animals, cruelty cases, basically anything related to animals that's not really zoo related, that's going to be us. So we also do business license checks. So if someone has like a doggy daycare or anything related to pets, we also make sure that those are up to code. But for the main thing, when people think of animal control, and the main message we try to get across is basically if there's a stray in Chicago, this is where they come. Being a municipal shelter, we cannot turn animals away. So if there's a line out the door at noon when we open, each of those animals has to be processed and brought into the shelter.
Got it. When I think of animal control, all these years later, I still think about Craig's father coming home after getting bit by a dog. I just think of dog catchers, but I know animal care and control is so much more.
Oh man, I love that comparison that you made. And that's my interpretation too. And even like kids growing up, you see a cartoon, there's animal control, it's always a dog catcher. They got a big net, they're chasing an animal down the alley, but we actually do so much more than that. And I think in the 10 years I've been here, there's been a whole evolution of that. So I think the main thing that message we try to get across, which people might find a little shocking at first, is we actually don't want your animal. So if there's any way we can help you keep your animal, we're going to do that. So say if someone brings in their pet, we're just asking what's the reason that they're surrendering it. And, you know, times are hard in general. Sometimes it might just be that they don't have enough money to buy the dog pet food or something. Mm-hmm. And they have to choose between feeding themselves or their pet. And they think bringing the animal to animal control is the best option. Well, thanks to like our partners, we actually have diversion now. So we can give you that bag of dog food. If your animal has behavior issues, we can set you up with a trainer. If you need a crate, we can give you a crate. So
I love that you're not trying to say we're going to do everything to say, no. We got other solutions for you. You need some dog food, need a crate, need a trainer. It sounds like for you all, you want this to be the last option for these pets.
Absolutely. I think everyone can agree pets are family. Even though your dog or cat might be happy at home, they come here and all of a sudden they're with about 400 other animals. And it's a stressful environment. So if there's any way that we can help people or even our rescue partners can help out, that's what we want to do.
You all are also here for people who may want to adopt new pets. What does that process look like? What are the important factors one should consider before coming to the shelter?
So one thing that I will always say, just from seeing the reason people bring in their animals as well, is this is a family member you're adding to the picture. So this isn't like, I'm going to get a new bike and ride it for the summer. This is a family member. This is a living thing. We do a lot of fee-waived adoptions sometimes. So we have like adoption events where fees are waived, but we stress so much that doesn't mean this animal is free. This animal is going to need vet care. This animal is going to need pet food. This animal might need training. There's so much financial that goes into owning a pet. It's a huge responsibility. And keep in mind, too, it might be summertime. You're like, oh, I'm going to get a dog to go, run around with the dog and hang out. winter's going to hit. If you're from Chicago, we get really bad winters sometimes. So keep in mind, you're still going to have to walk that dog in the winter. We see a lot of when we have the big weather changes, when it goes from like when we get the first snow or that first summer beach day where people bring in their pets. They're like, all right, I'm going to focus on the summertime vibes right now and bring my animal here.
Oh, damn. There's like a cuffing and an offloading season for pets too.
Absolutely. As soon as the first snowfall, they're like, well, I'm not walking this dog in the snow. You're crazy. And then they bring him here. And, this is a lifetime commitment. And this animal, like, I don't care if it's a cat, dog, these animals think you're the best thing in the world. And like, I'm married, I got kids. I'm like, no one's as excited to see me as my dog. And and we just want to let people know, even though fees are waived, it's huge responsibility. With that said, if you ever like need help down the line with training, if you have questions about like the type of food you should be feeding your dog, email us, call us, like visit us. We want to follow up and make sure that this is going to be the best match possible down the road too.
Like, how do you all walk people through that adoption process and educate them on maybe how it's different than going to a private seller?
So we have a hardcore group of volunteers here. There's over 100 of them. These people, they're like our matchmakers. They're our screeners for adoptions. They ask the tough questions and they're very blunt about it too. Like, you got a 16-year-old dog, now you're getting a puppy, like that dog's gonna get very stressed out. Or there's sometimes people that come in and they just want the one single kitten. So these volunteers are here telling them like, you're going to get one kitten. It's better to get them as a pair because they'll teach each other like how not to nip too hard and stuff like that. And they'll let them know like, this dog's going to be great. You're in for training. So that's a lot of work. As cute as it is, as fluffy as it is, you got a whole month or 2 months of training down, just initial training down. So it's like a big adjustment. And we don't try to scare people like get ready. It's crazy, but we just try to prepare them. Like it's a huge commitment. And also you're also basically gonna be walking around picking up this animal's poop for the rest of its life too. So there's a lot to it. We do have a questionnaire they fill out, and if they're renting, we do want to make sure that there's no breed restrictions or anything like that.
Okay.
Because we have heard horror stories, and we've even had some here where people, they fell in love with the animal, the whole family met the animal, and 3 days later, the landlord didn't know that it was a pit bull or something. So now the animal has to come back here, and it's stressful not only on your kids, but now that animal just got like a taste of a whole different life, and now it's back at the shelter. But sometimes the next adopter's like, oh, that animal was returned already, without knowing like the full picture. So we try to just put that information out there and just make sure these aren't the circumstances that we're running into.
At the heart of Chicago, there's Navy Pier. It's a place where the Centennial Ferris wheel gives views for days. It's where boat tours take off and where the music is always on. It's where you can spin around on rides, share around with friends, and taste every flavor Chicago has to offer. This is Navy Pier, and this is what it's made for. Plan your visit at NavyPier.org.
What's up, y'all? I got another fall theater pick for you, and it's coming out of the award-winning Paramount Theater, which is kicking off their 13th Broadway series season. The Full Monty is playing now through October 6th. This musical follows a group of unemployed steel workers out in Buffalo who decide to create a strip show to help pay the bills. Yes, you heard me right. Reviews call The Full Monty a big, bawdy, unabashed comic revival as these guys bare their souls to one another, and yes, their bodies too. If you're planning a party or another big outing, this might be the show for y'all. Groups of 10 or more get special savings. To grab your tickets, call 630-896-6666 or visit ParamountAurora.com. Use promo code CityCast for $5 off per ticket for up to 4 tickets. Again, that's ParamountAurora.com. At the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a lot of reporting around people adopting more pets, right? We were at home more, and so people brought a lot of new furry animals into the house. But as the years have gone on, we've seen a rise in whether it be stray animals, if we see a rise in pets being surrendered. Has that come into some control, or are those numbers still going up in regards to rise in stray animals as well as the rise in animals within you all's shelter system?
So I will say we look at a lot of data here. We also talk to a lot of other animal shelters, New York, California, Miami, Austin. 2019, it was a great year for animal control places. We were moving in the right direction. We had like all these things in place to get these animals transferred out, to get these animals adopted, and then COVID hit. I will say COVID was the first time that we actually got down to about 30 dogs in the building. Normally we have about 250, 300 dogs. So it was a crazy time. The building was so empty. We actually got bored some days. We were like walking, like this animal was like, wait, I'm walking out for the fifth time today. And it was great. And you know what? People did adopt animals, and we actually didn't see a lot of those animals come back.
Okay.
Unfortunately, what took place during COVID is just like we were isolating and we had all these restrictions, a lot of the vets also had restrictions on them. So I know people talk about people had to be intubated when they were sick. And one of the components of the drugs to intubate someone is the same drug that they use to sedate animals for surgery. People always come first, and a lot of those drugs were commandeered, and vets didn't have access to the supply they did. So less spay and neuters took place during COVID. So when COVID lifted, we saw these dogs were at home with other dogs, were bored, they had puppies. So the population basically boomed. So when COVID was over, we had all these people bringing in these animals that were born during COVID, and you think it's great. Like, oh my God, we got puppies. We'll get rid of them right away. We'll adopt them out. But what we ended up seeing was, the animals bubbled as well as people. So we had dogs that came in that were probably a year or 2 years old, never met anybody outside of their household.
I feel like when we talked about the return to school for young kids, we talked about pandemic toddlers, pandemic kids who hadn't had the same amount of social interaction. I didn't think about that I didn't think about the number of dogs who were just staying at home, getting busy and having puppies, but then also the amount of dogs and puppies who also lost their social networks, their ability to maybe be outside in community, learning from other dogs as well.
Absolutely. People were going on walks, but they weren't really like mingling with each other. Like they weren't like hanging out at dog parks, getting to know each other, and like doggy like daycares and stuff were kind of like going through their own thing too. And it was hard. So we got all these animals in that weren't really socialized. And even though they were great at home, we had a hard time handling them. So our rescue partners put a lot of like effort and work into socializing those animals that they pulled. But just in general, I'm going to say we're still catching up on this population boom that happened. Because it's like these dogs had puppies and they had puppies. And even though we're spay neutering more,
we're still behind.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the different animals you all come in contact with? Because right now we've been talking about pets, but I imagine your shelter system is maybe for dogs, cats. Which animals can stay in the shelter? And then which animals do you all commonly come in contact with in which you got to use a partner or take a different route other than housing it?
So cats and dogs are primarily what we get here. After that, we probably see a lot of rabbits, guinea pigs, the smaller animals, but we basically see it all. We've had 2 monkeys come in here, I think, in the last 5 years or so. We get tons of like farm animals. So we get like donkeys, we get horses, we get pigs, we get llamas, roosters, chickens, so all that kinds of stuff.
I'm still on these 2 monkeys, G. Was these strays, were these pets who had to be turned over? Because if you just like found a monkey in an alley in Avondale or like hanging out at the park in Washington Heights, that's kind of a funny story.
Actually, it's a little of both. So monkeys are not legally allowed to be pets in Chicago.
Right.
People do love their exotic animals, so they do bring them in. One of the monkeys was a stray. He actually ended up in an ambulance parking lot, and we have a cool picture of him just like hanging out on top of the ambulance. The ambulance was off, and we were able to catch him just because he was trained by people. The second one was actually surrendered to us. So it was somebody that had a pet monkey. They realized it was becoming too much. These things they're like little people. Except they have sharp teeth. They require a lot of mental stimulation.
Rip your finger off.
Yeah, all that stuff. So we had one that was surrendered, one that was caught in as a stray. I'm happy to report they both went to sanctuaries. So they're both living their best lives. They're actually hanging out with other monkeys.
So throughout your time there, when you get in animals that maybe like if it's a llama, if you're dealing with farm animals, to try to get them connected with, either a partner who has their own farm, get them to a sanctuary, get them to just a willing participant somewhere in the region. Is that your first goal?
Absolutely. So we do have space that we can convert. So we've had like a horse stay the night before. We've had donkeys and pigs stay the night. Chickens and roosters are basically here year round. But we work with a lot of rescue partners that specifically deal with those types of animals. Another big one that we get here, which is always surprising for people that don't live in Chicago, is alligators. I've probably seen about 10 to 12 alligators since I've been here. We had that really famous one not that long ago called Chance.
Right. I was like, Chance the Snapper, I'm familiar with, but where are these other 9 to 11 alligators coming from, and why they don't have fancy nicknames?
They all went straight to, I think, Louisiana's where most of them go. We work with Brookfield Zoo's Department of Herpetology, and they come take all those alligators. When they're a little bit bigger, they just basically take a drive down. If they're too accustomed to people, they usually go into sanctuaries. Otherwise, they go into the wild. Thankfully, we live in a city that has basically 3 zoos within reach. We have Lincoln Park Zoo, Brookfield Zoo, and the Shedd Aquarium. We do have an occasion, at least once a year, where a reptile expert comes in, and he kind of talks to our animal control officers the best way to capture a snake, the best way to handle an alligator. So we have all these constant trainings that keep going on. But in that same aspect, we also have these great zoos that when we do get a goat or something, or when we get like a pig, we can call on our partners and they'll have someone, or we'll go pick up a bag of food for the animal while it's here.
I mean, as the largest shelter in the city and the Midwest, how many animals are in the shelter at any given time across the various species that we've already listed off?
Yeah, so I will say here at Chicago Animal Care and Control, the population is unfortunately between 400 and 500 on a daily basis. And this is primarily cats and dogs.
And how often do animals get brought in? Is this an everyday thing? You see animals coming in and out?
Every single day. Like last year, I think the average was about 35 intakes a day. This could be stray animals, owner surrenders, confiscated animals. So animals that were in horrible situations that rightfully they should come here. We need to get these animals healthy, strong, and placed in homes again. This year, unfortunately, it's between 40 and 45 animals a day that are coming into the shelter.
Do you have a sense of the makeup between strays, between pets being surrendered, pets who have been brought out of terrible situations?
From January 1st through the end of August, we had basically 7,660 strays come in. That's an 18% increase from last year. And we had over 1,000 owner surrenders, which 1,000, when you compare that to strays, doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a 59% increase of owner surrenders compared to last year. We also had about 476 confiscates. So these could be animals that were possibly cruelty, possibly just someone left them in a car when they shouldn't have on a hot day kind of thing. So these are animals that we had to take, or someone moved out and left their animal behind. So that's considered a confiscate. We confiscated that animal just to open up and possibly an investigation, seeing what's going on, who the rightful owner was for that animal. I'm happy to report that even with this surge in intakes, our adoptions are actually up 29% this year so far. So we are busting our butts, getting animals into homes. Our transfer partners have also pulled more animals this year than in the past. So those are up 18%. And then we do get wildlife here too. So aside from like the alligators and stuff like that, we get raccoons, squirrels, pigeons, seagulls. So we have had over 600 of those this year alone.
I know this is a hard question to talk about, a hard question for people to hear about, but this is a shelter that euthanizes animals. I mean, how is that decision made when you are considering wildlife, maybe exotic pets, strays, surrendered animals? Can you kind of just walk me through how that decision is made?
So that's the reality. We are a municipal shelter. Like I said, we can't turn strays away like the more animals that come in. So we are seeing about a 20% increase in euthanasia. Euthanasia is always a last resort. So when it comes to euthanasia, we're looking at the condition of the animal. There's a lot of times people bring in their animal and, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, they're on death's door. These are like senior dogs, or this dog's like terminal, and they don't want to make the decision to put the animal down. It's a hard decision. So they bring them to us as either an owner surrender, or, I mean, there's a lot of times people bring in a stray. All the kids are crying. Like, we can't call somebody out. Like, I know this is your dog. The dog's crying as the person leaves, but they don't want to make that decision. So we do, in those cases, those animals, if they're not treatable, if a rescue's not willing to take them, and they're either like just senior on that store type of thing, those animals are selected for euthanasia.
And it's free at the shelter versus maybe at a vet or something like that?
Correct. So there is a $10 fee at the shelter for euthanasia. But for the most part, I mean, there's been times where that $10 you never know what someone's going through.
No,
$10
for sure.
could be a lot for somebody. So sometimes people would just leave the dog outside. Like we just seen them in line for euthanasia. Now the dog's tied up next to a tree. So we waive that fee depending on the person's tone and what's going on in their situation.
Yeah.
So that's compared to about 200, 300 at a vet. So there's a huge difference between bringing the animal here versus at a vet. But just regarding euthanasia in general, we also do deal with a lot of behavior things. So there could be a dog that like bit a kid, a dog that's just, it's hard to describe here just with the amount of animals we come in. We'd love to be able to work with every single animal to provide training. That's where thankfully our rescue partners step in. They do take dogs. I will say just in the past, the first 8 months, we had rescues pull over 5,000 animals. So these are dogs that went straight into rescue, places like Paws Chicago, One Tail at a Time, Treehouse. They pull these animals and then they're able to vet them or work with them if there's behavior things and then adopt those animals out when possible. It's been an evolution working here outside of like what I've shared, but we're talking more about the euthanasia aspect of things, which previously this department used to shy away from it. And since I've been here, they've let me have more honest conversations. And I think it's important people know like this should be a last resort. We do euthanize here. So if you have a family member who can take the pet, if you need help with like food to get by or something like that, that's the better scenario. And I think it's actually helped our adoption numbers, just to be more honest.
Because like you said, no matter how much good work you do, the sort of revolving door of pets and animals out and in, that just remains regardless of how much you do. But it is good to know that we're having more comprehensive conversations with people, because it also means we're not just stereotyping animal control. Like I said, I have been my whole life. Pops from Friday has been the image of what I think when I think animal control.
I'm telling you, you figure Disney is like our enemy. They're the ones that are perpetrating like these nets and stuff. When, if anything, our animal control officers is dropping off bags of food or reuniting pets with their owners.
More times than not. In your 10 years, has there been more money? Do you think you all get more attention? Because we're in budget season right now. And let's be real. I have not seen a single article that talks about how much money will or won't be going to this department. It's not one of those top of the list shy institutions.
So when you compare Chicago animal control to like other big cities, we're way under where we should be. I think our budget's at $7 million, which might sound like a lot, but you compare us to like Miami, New York, Austin, they make almost 3 times the budget we do, and they're able to do more programs. Thankfully, we partner with organizations like Paws Chicago. They're the biggest no-kill organization in the Midwest, where they help us with diversion, they help us with training. If it wasn't for these organizations, I don't know how we'd basically be making it right now. We also have an Amazon wish list, which I don't want to say we're the only department with an Amazon wish list, but that helps a lot too. We're able to get like stuff like leashes, collars, pooper scoopers, stuff that's not covered in our budget just because our budget goes so fast.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, we are talking about a wide variety of animals, but we have to be fair. Our bias kicks in. And so when we start talking about cats and dogs and birds, people get more emotional. But if we start talking about possums and raccoons and things like that, what is your protocol for animals that you're not planning to adopt out, but you may have had to remove, catch and release somewhere else? Like, what is your not only euthanasia policy, but what is your kind of care and handle policy around animals that, you aren't trying to relocate?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We do have to abide by state laws and federal laws. So bats are a big one that we get here. Basically, if there's been contact with a bat, that bat does have to be humanely put down and then tested for rabies. Not too long ago, there's been a steady rise in skunk rabies. So when we've had a skunk come in that we knew was in a yard where there were possibly pets in the yard, there could have been contact, that skunk is also humanely euthanized and then sent for testing as well to see if there was any rabies. And that's important too, because a lot of times people would find like a dead bat in their house, and then we find out they had like 3 cats. So we don't know if like the cat killed the bat. So we should test that just to make sure. Legally, we cannot relocate raccoons. So when raccoons come in, they do have to be put down. Obviously, there's some situations where if it's like a baby with a mom, and they're not bothering anybody, just let them be kind of thing. But if they're brought here or we have to like remove them from a house, unfortunately, those do have to be humanely euthanized. That's why I'm just going to do a little plug here. Anyone from Chicago, if you go to the beach right off Irving Park in Montrose, I know you guys think you're sneaky, but we see you guys feeding all of those raccoons on the rocks out there. I know they're fun looking. Those raccoons are really happy and plump because they're eating so much. But the day one of those raccoons bites somebody, we're probably going to have to get like half of those raccoons and test them for rabies, which means the animal will not survive. We'll be putting it down.
I love the very blatant, respectful, but blatant. He was like, I know you think you're doing them a service. We know they live there. And right now we letting them rock. But the more you feed them, thus the more maybe entitled, more aggressive they get about getting food. It could lead to a scenario with people who aren't familiar with the I don't know, is it school population, the family, the tribe of raccoons, and thus just on from a like scientific standpoint, if something happens, you can't just test the one, you gotta round up. Damn.
And I'm telling you, those raccoons eat fine already. They're very plump raccoons. They're living their best lives, but I'm telling you, people are looking for their Kodak moments with them, and it's been coming up a lot more frequently. So if anyone's listening, stop.
I mean, how can people get involved with CACC aside from just adopting?
So like I said, we have a lot of people that volunteer with us. I think that's the easiest thing to do. You can either volunteer here at the shelter, or you don't even have to step foot in the shelter to volunteer with us. We have a ton of offsite adoption events. So if we're ever in your neighborhood doing maybe a free clinic, we do free microchip and vaccine clinics throughout the city. You can help us there. You can help us sign people up. You could be the one giving the dog peanut butter as the vet's like doing its thing, doing an exam or vaccinating it. There's so many ways you can volunteer with us. And I always say the easiest thing too, if you can't do either of those because you're busy, follow us on social media and share our social media posts. We promote dogs and cats every day. You never know who from your work circle, your family circle, your friend circle might be looking to adopt a pet, and you just save the life by just clicking share.
Again, I want to give a huge thank you to our guest today. Armando Tejeda is the Public Information Officer at the Chicago Animal Care and Control. Armando, thank you for your energy today. Thank you for all of your enthusiasm throughout this conversation. It meant a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to our listeners.
Thank you. Absolutely. And on behalf of the animals, thank you, because any opportunity to share what's going on here is appreciated, no matter what the topic is. We just want to promote these animals and get them into their homes.
Before we let you go, make sure you stay tapped into all CityCast Chicago has to offer by bookmarking our website, chicago.citycast.fm. There you're going to find our latest articles and podcast episodes. You're going to find our neighborhood guides. You can subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago, and you can sign up to become a member of CityCast Chicago, where you'll not only get ad-free listening, but a special members-only events email directly to your inbox. Of course, I can't let you go without some good news. Catch me this Wednesday hosting the Moths Live Storytelling Slam at the Promontory in Hyde Park at 7. Now, if you want to participate, all you got to do is prepare a 5-minute story, buy a ticket, and put your name in the hat. I'll drop a link for you in the show notes so you can find the theme for that night's stories. Hopefully, I'll see you there. But in the meantime, in between time, meet me back here bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace. One question I didn't ask, do you have any animals at home?
I do. I have 2 dogs. One was from here. The other one was another rescue from another place. And also, I will say also animal control kind of saved my marriage during COVID. My partner wasn't working. They were like working from home. So I fostered so many animals during COVID. They were bored. I was like, here's a kitten that needs bottle feeding every 4 hours. And I always tell people, like, I used to bring home hamsters and tell them they were hospice cases when they weren't. And it's like 5 years later, the hamster's still alive in the wheel. And I'm like, well, like,
here we are.